Good Wednesday morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Debra Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
Well, suicide is on the rise in the United States, and get this, especially among young men. What's causing the spike? Who or what is to blame? I'll ask the Morning Light panel to discuss ways your church can engage one of the most challenging topics of our time.
It is a challenging topic. But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. Every Wednesday this month, we are listening to the faith journeys of some of our guests and panelists. Today, a Lancaster County man will describe his life growing up in an Amish community and how his faith led him in a different direction. And learn how a mom became instrumental in the nonprofit Moms in Prayer.
Debra, I think we forget so often to tell our stories, our journeys of faith. We're not born Christians. And it's a lifelong journey and a process.
It is, and it's interesting to hear them.
Yeah. Well, in the mid-1800s, poet-philosopher Henry David Thoreau wrote, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation, concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind." That's a pretty harsh assessment, but feels so very connected to the 20% of American men who admit they've been diagnosed with depression at some point in their life. But we also know this is true because we see and feel it in the men around us, and that's increasingly so, Debra.
For sure, because the American Institute for Boys and Men find despair too often leads men to take their own lives. The suicide risk for men is 4 times higher than women. 2 years ago, nearly 40,000 men committed suicide. That's amazing. There's been a 30% increase in suicide for men aged 25 to 34. Tragically, more people die to suicide than car accidents.
That's very surprising when you think of the awareness that we have about car accidents, but not suicide.
Right.
So what's behind the trend? Who's to blame? Social media, the loss of authentic friendships and relationships with men, single-parent homes, the prevalence of on-demand pornography, or a combination of all these problems. But the bigger question for church leaders and ordinary Christians is, what can we do about it? How can we talk to and come alongside a generation of men, especially young men? How can we turn their despair into hope? The Morning Light panel will discuss those questions. Pastor Joe Green, John Wetzel, and Cynthia Lyons with us this morning. This is such a difficult topic, and I want to thank each of you for deciding to say yes to weigh in on it this morning, because I think whenever we hear, and you can kind of read it often in an obituary, where young man, the age, the dates you see, so that person was very young, and then there's an allusion to the person ending life, perhaps prematurely, but you don't really know what happened until you talk to the family. John, you're a coach. You work with many, many young men. You see and know this pretty well. How significant is it? We see statistics and numbers, but do you feel that it is something we have to be talking about more?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the youth mental health, especially the mental health of young men, is weighing on our society. And I think, again, these kids were decoupled for a long time during COVID. You know, and one of the things I think needs to be studied is when they were decoupled from their churches and their other pro-social supports, in many cases their grandparents, you know, their elders decoupled from it, and then lay upon it what the reality of brain development, especially with young men, where up until the age of 25 to 30, until a man's brain is fully developed, 5 to 7 years behind women. In my case, about a decade behind.
Only five?
But no, it's a true fact, and actually it informs the law on how we treat 17-year-old men who commit murder, right? So you have that, and one of the ways that specifically, it's the prefrontal cortex, which is relevant. I'm not just trying to sound some way, but the prefrontal cortex is a part of your brain that controls impulses. So what happens is it isn't fully developed. You get depressed, and you're not plugged into a network. And men need to ask for help, and they're not one of the things that being decoupled from these pro-social supports are, pro-social supports, like you go to church and someone sees something's off and they ask about you. When you're on your own and you're getting supported by your phone, you don't have people proactively doing it, which requires men to ask for help, which we don't do.
So the asking for help piece of what you're talking about, Cynthia, a lot of young men are turning to ChatGPT. It is a way for you to talk to a virtual therapist, take your answers and virtually get some help, but it's not a human being. How do you, knowing this is the reality, knowing these young men are living what Thoreau called these quiet lives of isolation and desperation, what is the most successful way to break through?
Well, I think, the asking piece is the most difficult for young men, middle-aged men, older men, because I think the difference between women and men are, women have a tendency to emote more. That's what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And guys, they really keep things close to the vest. And that makes it really hard. I do think social media plays into this. As much as girls take a look at social media and go, oh, well, I really want that, hairstyle, or I really want this. I think guys are looking up to what they can't meet. I heard Natalie Grant one time talk about female and men, like in relationships and in marriages. And she made a comment about, until we actually prove our identity is in Christ, we can't meet the identity of what someone else may want us to be. So as females, if I'm looking towards my husband or boyfriend or whatever that is to go, well, you should be doing that, it's not something that can ever be met. The expectation there is just too much in our society today.
What she's describing, you see play out in mass shootings so often, the biography, the profile of a young man, and these are young men, is isolation, it is obsession, it is the deep, dark parts of the web. It's almost always connected to pornography. Yes. People that think it's this kind of this innocent vice that you can kind of play with. Really don't know what they're messing with. Right. So when you identify somebody in your church, or you just think there's something wrong, or I haven't seen them, how do you practically get to the conversation Cynthia's talking about, which is identity and who you are? How do you start that? It feels very intimidating, especially if there's a massive generational gap.
Yeah. So I always look at the foundation of how men were created and hardwired. And God created men to be humans with a purpose. And our passions as men should be connected to the purpose that God created us with. And what we've seen in our society is that we've detached men from their purpose, and we have created, as Cynthia said, some goals for them to reach that are not only unachievable, but they're unfulfilling. So if I can talk to a young man and I say, what is your passion? What is your purpose in life? Because once we pursue that purpose, then we feel fulfillment. But when that purpose is missing, and we have had it substituted with all the things the world says, if you look at social media, it's about materialism, hedonism, and all those things that will never fulfill them, and given a false identity, then they're always going to feel like they're lacking. And men, when they feel like they're not fulfilling their purpose, or they have no purpose or direction, many of them get to the place where they're so depressed that they're saying, I don't even need to live because I don't have a purpose. What's the purpose of me living?
So you've diagnosed it, but what is the opening line? What is you see that person, you know that person, maybe you've gotten a hint because somebody called you and said, Joe, I think I need help with my kid. Yeah. I think I need help with this neighbor guy. I think I need help with my boyfriend, my fiance, my husband. What is the opening line to engage that conversation, to say, I want to talk to you? What do you say?
Well, what I do is I sit down and have a conversation with them and start asking them about some of the things they do, what do they like to do, what they don't. And usually because of the wisdom from age, not because I'm a genius, but because I'm getting older now, I can start to identify that these are the type of things that you really are passionate about, and how can I connect them to a purpose that I feel like God has placed in their lives.
So you take it slow, the conversation.
Take it slow, have a conversation, because you listen to them, it builds trust, and then they get to a place where they say, okay, I can share more with you because what I've shared with you, I feel like I can trust you with it.
The world, and when I say the world, for people who aren't religious people, church people, like, what does that mean? You mean the globe? Or the people outside of Christian fellowship or community say this is a mental health crisis, and here is, you need to see a psychiatrist, as a psychologist, and maybe that is a part of the conversation, but often bypass the spiritual piece of it, which is often at the root of it. How do you, in environments that are not church, make that leap? How do you open the conversation with a young man you know is on the brink or in a really tough spot, or you know from their face that they're underwater?
Yeah, well, first of all, nothing fills the God hole but God. And I think all the stuff we're talking about is trying to fill that God hole, and it speaks to this feeling of unfulfillment. But the only path to connect with kids is TIME, is to spend time with them. And you'd be amazed how quickly just being interested, just asking them a question about them, being caring about them, not about make sure you pass this test at this level or anything other than that you don't have a need, and it's about what they need. And then this is no different than what a missionary is supposed to do. We're supposed to build a relationship and let the light of Christ reflect off us to these kids.
How does that not get weird? I mean, for people that are like, why is this guy, calling me, taking it? How do you do it in a way that's natural, that's appropriate, that respects the people in their life who really may not be giving great advice? Might be a parent, might be a grandparent, and they're the ones putting all kinds of bad pressure on them. How do you get over that wall to make sure you can have that conversation?
Well, you put yourself in a position where that's the expectation. A coach, the expectation is that you guide someone. And I'll tell you, Harrisburg School District does not have middle school sports. There's an opportunity to volunteer to create these things at
Say
times.
That again. Harrisburg School District does not have
middle school sports.
Okay.
So you take all this time, idle time is not good. You can volunteer. You get kids around. You build that relationship, and your behavior is supposed. Remember, we're supposed to talk about the word, and if necessary, use our words.
Yes.
Last 30 seconds. Grandparent, parent, uncle, aunt knows there's somebody. What's your advice to them on how to crack the conversation, open it up to do something meaningful in the life of a child and help?
Well, I mean, the reality of that is, I would say find somebody outside of your inner circle. And I don't necessarily, a therapist is fabulous, but a coach, a teacher, somebody that has been somebody that your child looks up to, and call them and say, I need help. And then simple. Walk in and say, wow, John, seems like you're having a tough day. Instead of throwing too much at them, sit and quiet, because eventually they're going to say something that's meaningful.
And if anybody needs a pastor, call Joe.
That's right.
St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church.
Great plug.
Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, friend. I think this is very helpful. Well, coming up on Morning Light, from buggies to blessings, the CEO of Blessings of Hope, David Lapp, shares his journey of faith and family and feeding nations. You're watching Morning Light right here on Lighthouse TV.
Welcome back. A Lancaster County man was raised Amish, but his faith took him in a different direction. David Lapp is the CEO of Blessings of Hope, a nonprofit that combats food waste by providing nourishment to individuals and families facing food insecurity. Thanks for being with us this morning. Remind us of Blessings of Hope.
Yes, the Blessings of Hope, we are a nonprofit food logistics distribution ministry where we serve over 1,600 nonprofits with food that we get from over 200 donors, and we're that bridge in between where we're able to break down the volume to serve the organizations in the capacity they want to be served.
Now, you are one of the founders of Blessings of Hope. Tell us about your faith journey.
Yeah, so going back, I grew up in an old Amish household, horse and buggy, attended a one-room schoolhouse, and there was first to 8th grade in one room, about 35 students. When I was 13, we moved to Indiana for cheaper farmland. So there was 8 boys and 2 girls in our family, and Dad wanted to give all of us boys the opportunity to farm. And looking back, I see that as a huge foundational piece of how we're able to do what we did today. But leading up to being excommunicated in 2005, in 1999, my oldest brother Steve fell out of the barn and crushed his pelvis. Through that, he learned about the healing power of God and the laying on of hands and healing that can happen with that. And he very quickly saw pretty drastic results in his healing journey. The doctors had told him he'll probably need a hip replacement every 5 to 7 years. This is now 26 years and he hasn't had a hip replacement since. And he walks without a limb. So we saw God do mighty miracles in our own families. Through that, my brother Steve started reaching out to other people, praying with them, helping them through times of not just physical needs, but also emotional needs. And through that, it got to the point where we were excommunicated from our Amish church because we didn't fit the religious box. We didn't fit the religious mindset. And we were experiencing God, and there was no denying it. And you go through life, you look back, and if God's doing something that's way beyond our box or way beyond our mindset, we still have to go with what God shows us.
So where did you find God was leading you?
So in 2004, 2005, for a number of weeks, a month, there was 5 of us brothers that would get together almost every night for prayer, Bible study, and just digging deeper into who God is. And when we realized that we can actually have that relationship with God, that is not just somebody that we read about in a book, but we are actually able to have that relationship. And when you experience that, there's no way you can go back to what you had been taught before. You just can't.
And it must be difficult, though, breaking that relationship with family and friends.
Yeah, it was definitely a hard journey, especially early on. We had a group of us siblings that were able to hang together pretty closely. And that's really what, with that and our relationship with God, our relationship with each other was really what was able to get us through this. Since that, like my in-laws are still older Amish, the relationship was strained, at least initially for a season, but I feel like we have built that probably, at least to a very good level. We're able to talk about what we believe, why we believe what we do, why we do what we do, that kind of a thing. And we have come to respect each other's differences and different interpretations of why we do what we do.
How do you find that God is directing you now every day?
Well, he's a part of my daily life, and it's, I like to see my relationship with God similar to an internet connection on a computer. If you're connected, you have access to whatever's out there. You have access for Him to show you what to do today. Same with with a computer. If you're connected to the internet, you can search anything you want to search. But if you believe that you need to bring everything in-house and now you're limited to what you know. But if you have that relationship with God where you have that connection, if something comes up that you don't know what to do with, you can pray, you can ask Him, and He will give you an answer. That's what I've found.
Walking and talking with God every day.
Yeah.
Really making it a part of your life and the way you live.
Yeah. Not just on a Sunday morning, but on a Tuesday afternoon, if you have a difficult phone call or an unexpected something come up, take that time and just have that time with God.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us,
You're
David.
welcome. Thank you.
Coming up next on Morning Light, Sheryl Light grew up in a Christian home, but when she suffered a personal, devastating loss, it could have tested her faith. Learn how that journey led her to a career of helping those dealing with grief. We're back in 1 minute. Sheryl Light serves as the Group Information Assistant with Moms in Prayer International. She grew up in a Christian home, but her faith was tested when a pregnancy ended in stillbirth. Sheryl shares how this loss opened the door to help others in the grieving process. Sheryl, thanks so much for being with us. Remind us again about Moms in Prayer International.
Moms in Prayer is an amazing organization that their mission is to impact schools and children for Christ by gathering women to pray weekly for their children. And we want every school and in every country and around the world to be covered in prayer.
And that's very good, because I think teachers, administrators, kids, they need our prayer for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we've seen, I'm from the Philadelphia area, and we are super excited that this is the first time that we have found Moms in Prayer register. Now, I believe there's praying moms all over the city, but registering these ladies that are saying, yes, I'm going to pray and commit to praying for my children in the Philadelphia area. And it's been exciting to see that grow. 3 years ago, we didn't have one Moms in Prayer group in Philadelphia. Now we have at least 6. And so we've been excited to see how God has been growing that in our country.
So tell us your faith journey.
Well, Debra, I am a preacher's kid. So preacher's kids have a lot of expectations put on them, right? So sometimes that's good and sometimes that's not. But I was one of those good girls that loved Jesus with her whole heart, soul, and mind, and wanted to do that her whole life. So as I grew, went to college, got a business degree, and did lots of different jobs, married my husband, and then in our lives we had a stillbirth. And it was this tragic event that happened for us. And so I was like, God, I'm this good girl. I've been doing this my whole life. What is that? Like, you threw this kink into our beautiful life. And the Lord had used that to remind me that my job is to minister to others too, as I was ministered to. So I went back to school to be in mortuary school and became a funeral director. And now I'm a funeral director and have been able to use my faith journey with this loss journey of my own and how I can minister to others when they're going through grief.
So how did this tragedy strengthen your faith?
God's word is so powerful and his people are good. And having God's word to rely on and people that came around me, that's how you learn how to work through grief. It also, because of that tragedy, the Lord has used it in so many opportunities for opening doors for me to be able to love other people well. And my husband and I have become intentional about making sure that every life counts, every person counts. And so we've had 2 additional children. We have a son and a daughter. And so my Moms in Prayer journey, along with my loss journey, marry one another, because I want to make sure that my life matters, their life matters, and I want to make sure that young families that come alongside of me know that we want to be intentional about everything that we do.
Wow, so how do you use your faith in what you do?
Well, I have a pretty great coworker who owns the business, and he lets me pray with people, and I'm pretty vocal about my faith, because I don't know how you walk this journey without having God in your life. And so I'm able to pray with families, and also it also is this flexible job where sometimes we're busy and sometimes we're not. So then I'm able to work with moms and Moms in Prayer, and I go to Philadelphia and pray with moms there, pray with people in Chester County and Montgomery County and all over the state. And we just really believe that when you put God first, that he can cover a multitude of lots of things. And this prayer that I love to pray is, God, would you make up the difference between who I am and who I need to be? And he does that every day for me, because I don't know what my day will be like, but the Lord knows. And I believe that with Moms in Prayer too, that when we take our kids and we're going to put them on the school bus for the first time, God, make up the difference, because I'm not good enough as a mom, but Lord, you're enough for my kid to be able to get on the bus, and you're going to take care of them, and you're going to make sure that that with you nothing is impossible.
And that is so true. And how do you see this ministry making a difference as far as Moms in Prayer International?
Moms in Prayer has made a big impact in my life and in many other women's lives because of the opportunity to, this word impact has really just made a difference for me, that Moms of Prayer gives resources, it gives community, and it gives a time and a place for women to be able to come together and say, God, make up the difference, because I'm going to bring my heavy heart to the God who is the burden bearer.
Yeah, certainly making a difference for many people, but more moms need to get involved. Sheryl, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Next week, we will share the faith journeys of two of our most popular panelists, John Wetzel and Cynthia Lyons. You won't want to miss these interviews. Stay with us. We will be right back. Welcome back. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, connecting generous givers with kingdom causes. The Faithful Give runs from October 19th through October 21st. Learn how you can take part. Plus, you will hear from an organization that benefits from this program. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Well, thank you, Debra. Well, history matters, and if you live in Pennsylvania, October is a pretty significant milestone in our long 344-year-old story. It's the month our founder, William Penn, arrived to launch what he called a holy experiment, a zone of freedom for people who wanted to find and worship God based on their convictions, people who escaped persecution and mockery, free to follow God's plan without threats from an earthly king or obeying at the edge of a sword. But Penn also left behind an example of how to deal with people who didn't worship like him, who didn't believe in the God of the Bible. That example was good faith, goodwill, living honorably, keeping a promise. William Penn showed us what it's like to live as neighbors and friends, and what a legacy it is. For Debra and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching today. Now go check on your neighbors, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow.